There comes a moment in life when you realize that no matter how hard you try, you can never make everyone happy. This realization does not arrive suddenly. It builds quietly over time through small disappointments, unspoken resentment, and emotional exhaustion. You begin to notice how often you pause before speaking, carefully choosing words that will offend no one. You replay conversations in your mind late at night, wondering if you said too much, too little, or the wrong thing entirely. You worry about how others perceive you, even when you are alone. Slowly, your inner world becomes crowded with other people's expectations. For many years, you may have believed that being kind meant being agreeable, that being loved required constant sacrifice. You learned to smile even when you are uncomfortable. You said yes when your entire body wanted to say no. You adjusted your opinions, your boundaries, and sometimes even your identity to fit into what others needed you to be. On the surface, this may have looked like generosity, but deep inside, something felt off. A quiet frustration began to grow, not toward others, but toward yourself. Over time, this pattern takes a toll. You start to feel invisible in your own life. Your needs are always postponed, your emotions minimized, your dreams placed on hold because someone else's comfort seems more important. You might feel tired all the time, not physically but emotionally. Even rest does not feel restful anymore. There is a constant pressure to perform, to be available, to be understood without ever truly being seen. This is usually when the questioning begins. You start asking yourself why your peace always comes last, why your happiness feels conditional, why love seems to require so much self-erasure. These questions can be unsettling because they challenge everything you have been practicing for years. You may feel fear at the thought of disappointing people. You may worry that setting boundaries will make you selfish or ungrateful. Yet, despite the fear, something inside you refuses to stay silent. This moment is not about rebellion, it is about awareness. It is the subtle but powerful realization that constantly pleasing others has come at the cost of your authenticity. You begin to see that approval is fleeting, but self-respect is lasting. You may not act on this realization immediately, but once it appears, it cannot be unseen. This is the beginning of a shift. The moment you recognize the cost of always putting yourself second is the moment you begin to wake up to a different way of living. When you finally stop pleasing everyone, the first thing you encounter is discomfort. It arrives quietly at first, then all at once. Saying no feels unnatural, almost wrong, because you are so used to explaining yourself and softening your boundaries. The silence after you choose yourself can feel heavy. You may expect instant relief, but instead you are met with anxiety and doubt. Your mind questions whether you are being too harsh, too distant, or too selfish. This inner resistance is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is simply the echo of old conditioning losing its grip. As your behavior changes, people around you begin to notice. Some are genuinely confused because the version of you they knew was predictable and accommodating. Others feel disappointed, not because you harmed them, but because they can no longer rely on your constant availability. A few may react with anger or passive aggression, subtly trying to pull you back into old patterns. These reactions can be painful, especially if you pride yourself on being kind and understanding. You may feel tempted to go back, to apologize, or to over-explain your choices just to restore harmony. Guilt often becomes your closest companion during this phase. It whispers that you are abandoning others or betraying who you used to be. But this guilt is misleading. It does not come from hurting someone, it comes from breaking a habit of self-neglect. You were rewarded for being agreeable for so long that self-respect now feels unfamiliar. Yet beneath this guilt, something else begins to surface, a subtle sense of relief, a quiet space where your energy is no longer constantly leaking out. You start to notice small but powerful changes. You no longer feel obligated to respond immediately. You begin making decisions without rehearsing how to justify them. Your body feels lighter because it is no longer carrying unspoken resentment. You realize that honesty requires less effort than constant accommodation. Each time you honor a boundary, your confidence grows, even if your voice shakes while doing it. This phase teaches you an important truth. Not everyone who benefits from your silence will celebrate your growth, and that is okay. Discomfort is not a sign of failure, it is evidence of change. You are learning to sit with the unease instead of escaping it. Slowly, the fear of disappointing others weakens, and the trust in yourself strengthens. What once felt terrifying begins to feel necessary. This is the turning point where choosing yourself stops feeling like a mistake and starts feeling like self-respect. As time passes, the emotional fog begins to lift, and clarity slowly takes its place. The constant second-guessing that once dominated your thoughts starts to quiet down. Without the pressure to please everyone, you finally have space to observe your life honestly. You notice how much of your energy was spent managing reactions instead of living truthfully. This awareness can feel both liberating and sobering. You realize that many of your past choices were not alike. Ned with your values, but with your fear of rejection. One of the most noticeable changes during this stage is the shift in your relationships. Some connections deepen in unexpected ways. People who truly respect you begin to show up differently. They listen when you speak, accept your boundaries, and value your presence rather than your usefulness. These relationships feel lighter and more balanced because they are no longer driven by obligation or guilt. You experience conversations where you can be honest without bracing yourself for backlash, and this creates a new sense of emotional safety. At the same time, other relationships begin to fade. This can be one of the most painful parts of the process. You may realize that certain people were only close to you because you were always accommodating. When you stop overgiving, the connection weakens. This loss can bring sadness, confusion, and even grief. You may question whether your growth is worth the distance it creates, but slowly you begin to understand that losing connections built on self-sacrifice is not the same as losing love. With fewer distractions, you start turning inward. You become more aware of your own needs, emotions, and limits. You begin asking yourself what you truly want, not what will keep others comfortable. This self-inquiry strengthens your sense of identity. You are no longer defined by how helpful or agreeable you are. Instead, you begin to see yourself as a complete person with valid desires and boundaries. Confidence grows naturally in this phase, not from external praise, but from internal alignment. Each time you honor your truth, you reinforce trust in yourself. You no longer need constant validation because your sense of worth is no longer dependent on approval. Life starts to feel more intentional. You make choices that reflect who you are, not who you are expected to be. This star. GE is about integration. You are learning that clarity comes from honesty and strength comes from self-respect. While not everyone will walk with you into this new chapter, those who remain are aligned with the real you. And for the first time, that feels like enough. In the end, stopping people-pleasing leads you to a deeper understanding of what it truly means to be whole. For a long time, you may have believed that selflessness required self-erasure, that love meant constant compromise, and that peace could only exist when everyone around you was satisfied. But as you step fully into your authenticity, these beliefs begin to fall apart. You start to see that constantly shrinking yourself never created harmony. It only created quiet resentment and emotional distance from your own life. You come to realize that choosing yourself is not an act of selfishness, but an act of honesty. When you live truthfully, your actions align with your values, and this alignment brings a sense of inner calm that approval never could. You no longer feel the need to explain every decision or defend your boundaries. Silence becomes comfortable. You trust yourself enough to let others misunderstand you, if that is the price of staying true to who you are. This kind of peace is steady and grounded, not fragile or dependent on external validation. As you continue forward, life begins to feel lighter. You notice how much energy you once spent anticipating reactions, avoiding conflict, and managing perceptions. Without that burden, your days open up. You engage in conversations more honestly, pursue goals that genuinely matter to you, and allow yourself to rest without guilt. Your sense of purpose becomes clearer because it is no longer shaped by fear. You are living from intention rather than obligation. This transformation also changes how you love and connect with others. You show up more authentically, without masks or hidden expectations. Your kindness becomes genuine, not transactional. You give because you want to, not because you feel pressured to. This creates healthier, more meaningful connections. People may come and go, but the relationships that remain are rooted in mutual respect and emotional honesty. Perhaps the most powerful realization of all is that you do not lose yourself anymore. For the first time, you feel at home within your own mind and heart. You trust your voice. You honor your limits. You recognize that your worth was never meant to be measured by how much you could sacrifice. When you stop pleasing everyone, you stop abandoning yourself. And in that return to self, you discover a life that feels real, grounded, and deeply your own.